I called this talk originally the integration of the teachings, because it is from the book The Tales of Beelzebub to his grandson, and in this book there are 3 distinct teachings. However, I've changed the title and I call it the integration of the teaching, because what I want to show is that there are 3 teachings in Gurdjieff's writings, the book The Tales of Beelzebub to his grandson, and that these teachings are stem essentially from one teaching, which is actually Gurdjieff's teaching. It is the teaching that Gurdjieff started to give to Ouspensky, and which Ouspensky misinterpreted and misunderstood, and has subsequently become known as Gurdjieff's teaching. The misinterpretations, the misunderstandings of Ouspensky have become known as Gurdjieff's teaching, and they're not. They come from Ouspensky's teaching, primarily in London from 1921 to 1941, and from the book published in 1950, the book In Search of the Miraculous, Fragments of an Unknown Teaching, which is Ouspensky's misinterpretation and misunderstanding of Gurdjieff, creating a completely different teaching. So there is what I call the Gurdjieff tradition, which is, I suggest, the teaching that you understand as Gurdjieff's teaching. And this comes from Ouspensky. Because, if I say it bluntly, Gurdjieff did not write the book In Search of the Miraculous. It's not Gurdjieff's teaching. Now, it's true that a manuscript of this book, a copy of this book, was taken after Ouspensky's death in 1947. In 1948, a copy of the manuscript was taken to Paris. Parts of it were read to Gurdjieff, and Gurdjieff said, "This book very exact." But that's not what he said. What he actually said was, "This book very exact. He write what I say. This book very exact. He write what I say." So where Ouspensky, the journalist, adept at interviewing people and recording exactly what they've said, has recorded very exactly what Gurdjieff told him. So where this book quotes Gurdjieff, it is very exact. But most of the book, In Search of the Miraculous, consists of Ouspensky's interpretation of what Gurdjieff told him, and Ouspensky's understanding, shall we put it in inverted commas, of what Gurdjieff told him. And this is not Gurdjieff's teaching. It's a misinterpretation and a misunderstanding. And this has led to a false teaching, which I call the Gurdjieff tradition, and which I suggest comes from Ouspensky, not Gurdjieff. Now, the All and Everything Conference, when I first encountered it, was explicitly described as on the writings of G.I. Gurdjieff. It may still be so. On the writings of G.I. Gurdjieff. So what I'm going to say today comes from the writings of G.I. Gurdjieff in conjunction with the very exact things that Ouspensky recorded Gurdjieff as saying to him. So the teaching that the teachings that I'm going to speak about will not be familiar to you, because they are Gurdjieff's teachings. And I've called this the integration of the teaching, because behind these 3 teachings I'm going to speak about, there is actually Gurdjieff's teaching, what he was saying. And I suggest it is completely different to whatever you understand now as being Gurdjieff's teaching, which I suggest is the Gurdjieff tradition coming from the writings and the teachings of Ouspensky. That is to say, it consists of Ouspensky's misinterpretation and misunderstanding of the very exact things that Gurdjieff said to him, and that later Gurdjieff very exactly wrote down in his own writings. So I'm speaking here about the writings of G.I. Gurdjieff. And much of what I say may be unfamiliar to you. Now I said that there are three teachings in the book, The Tales of Beelzebub, to his grandson. This is a book actually written by Gurdjieff. So this is what he wanted to say. This is his teaching. The first teaching is about us as ordinary men and women. Gurdjieff writes, there is a break in the chain of energetic production in us. We don't receive the energies we should have. We don't have the energies we should have. We don't receive the foods at a much higher level that we should have. There is a break in the chain of energetic production in us. We don't have the energies we should have. We fall as ordinary men and women to a very low level, energetically. We fall quickly or slowly. We are different people. And we arrive at a depleted energetic state. We are in a depleted energetic state as ordinary men and women, and we fall into internal structures of many kinds from which we cannot emerge. That is to say, we can't exist because we don't have the energies to do so, independently of these internal structures. Two examples that are most obvious of internal structures that we fall into and can't maintain ourselves independently of these structures. We are three-centered or three-brain beings. Throughout Gurdjieff's writings, we are three-centered, three-brain beings. The other, throughout Gurdjieff's book, The Tales of Beelzebub, to his grandson, he writes that we have two consciousnesses having nothing in common. Two conscious minds having nothing in common. This is a structure. And it's a structure we can't get out of because we don't have the energies to do so. So Gurdjieff is saying we fall to a very low energetic level, a depleted energetic state in which we fall into internal structures, and we can't exist as individuals independently of these structures. We don't exist. We're totally identified with these structures. And as a result of this, the fact that we are trapped in internal structures from which we cannot escape, we are forced to create in ourselves an abnormal psychology. We have an abnormal psychology. We are slugs. We are abnormal. We are bizarre. We are peculiar. We are strange. All these things occur again and again in the book, The Tales of Beelzebub, to his grandson. And this is what Gurdjieff was starting to teach Ouspensky, recorded in the book In Search of the Miraculous. These are the things that Gurdjieff said very exactly to Ouspensky, and Ouspensky misinterpreted and misunderstood Gurdjieff. So we are trapped in internal structures and we have an abnormal psychology because there is a break in the chain of energetic production in us. We don't have the energies we should have. We fall into a depleted energetic state. So this is Gurdjieff's teaching. This is the teaching about the ordinary man or woman. We have an abnormal psychology. Gurdjieff's teaching is not a psychological teaching, I hasten to add. The only psychology in Gurdjieff's teaching is to say we are abnormal. We have an abnormal psychology. It's not a psychological teaching, it's not a philosophical teaching. Nothing to do with these things. It is an energetic teaching, and it is a teaching about structures. Man the machine. Machine is a complex device made by man in order to perform a specific function or functions, and it always has an operator. By speaking to Ouspensky about man the machine, Gurdjieff is saying, we're looking at the machine, not the operator. I'm not teaching psychology. I'm not teaching about the operator. The machine doesn't work properly, so the operator has to adapt to the fact that the machine doesn't work properly and has to use the machine in an abnormal way. We have an abnormal psychology, but it's not a psychological problem. It's the machine, the energies, the structure that is faulty. So this is Gurdjieff's teaching about the ordinary man or woman. This is what Gurdjieff was teaching Ouspensky. Now there is another teaching. Gurdjieff did say very exactly to Ouspensky, man is food for the moon. This is a more universal teaching. The first is our situation as ordinary men and women, as individuals in a sense, although we are not individuals because we can't exist independently of these internal structures. We're not individuals, and yet we're viewing each of us as separate entities, but en masse, what's our purpose? We are food for the moon. And in his book, The Tales of Beelzebub, to his grandson, Gurdjieff is explicit about this. Organic life on Earth exists, it's an extraordinary thing, and its purpose is to provide a substance that he calls askokin as food for the moon. It's an abnormal situation that has arisen by accident, by error, and to stabilize the situation, there is organic life, including human beings, on the Earth in order to provide the energy askokin to maintain the moon and to allow the moon, perhaps, we don't know, to allow the moon to develop, to become a planet. So our purpose on Mars is to provide the substance askokin. Now the specific aspect of this teaching that is the most interesting and concerns us as human beings is that as human beings we should provide the substance askokin in the course of our lives of a sufficient quality and quantity in order to maintain the moon Earth complex, to maintain, and essentially we are maintaining it for the security of the rest of the universe. The rest of the universe is concerned about this abnormal situation, and we are here to pacify and calm the rest of the universe, to reassure the rest of the universe that we'll look after this situation, the Earth-Moon complex, and the rest of the universe needn't worry about it. But we don't do that. We are supposed to provide the substance askokin for the moon of a particular quality and quantity, but we don't. We only provide, and this is what Gurdjieff said to Ouspensky, we only provide the substance askokin as food for the moon when we die, as ordinary men and women. Because, why? Because let's go back to the initial idea. There is a break in the chain of energetic production in us. We don't have the energies we should have. We fall to a very low energetic level in which we become trapped in internal structures from which we cannot escape. We are thus forced to create in ourselves an abnormal psychology. That's our situation as ordinary men and women. So we don't have the energies that we should have. We don't have the energies to provide askokin for the moon. During our lives, we can only provide these energies, like animals, when we die. So it's advantageous for great nature, let's use this rather grand term, it's advantageous for great nature that there should be lots and lots of human beings on the earth and lots of people should die. Does it sound familiar? But Gurdjieff is saying there is another way. Because what should happen is that we should be living at a much higher energetic level as normal men and women, And at this much higher energetic level, we can actualize a process he calls being part cadol duty. And he defines it as conscious labours and intentional suffering. It doesn't sound very nice, but actually it is. And the term being part cadol duty, the term being tells us we can only do this at a higher level when we actually exist, when we have the energies that allow us to exist independently, to be independently of these internal structures that we are trapped in. So there is another possibility that we can, by raising the whole energetic level of the organism, we can produce a substance askokin by means of being part cadol duty, conscious labours and intentional suffering, whilst we are alive. And this changes the whole situation, because then it's advantageous that we are alive as human beings and that we live a long time, as used to happen. Because during our existence then, we are producing the substance askokin, as Gurdjieff said, food for the moon. So that's the second teaching. And you need to think about the implications of that for human beings, which are enormous. We have two possibilities. One, we exist as ordinary human beings in a depleted energetic state. We live essentially like animals, and we produce the substance askokin when we die. So there are lots of people on the earth and lots of people die. But contrast this with the situation, should we be able to exist as normal human beings at a higher energetic level, actualize being part cadol duty, conscious labours and intentional suffering, produce askokin while we are alive, and in this case it's advantageous for great nature that people should live on the earth and live on the earth for a long time, because whilst they are living on the earth, they are producing the substance askokin as food for them. Completely different situation, and massive, massive implications for the quality of life of human beings on the earth. Whether we live like animals or whether we live normally like normal human beings, normal individuals. Now there is a third teaching in the book, The Tales of Beelzebub, to his grandson. This teaching, I've spoken about two teachings: our situation as ordinary men and women, viewed in a sense as individuals, as solitary individuals. The situation of human beings en masse, what is our purpose? Food for the moon. The two different ways of providing that food. And the third teaching is, what are the possibilities for development for men and women on the earth? What are our possibilities? Do we have any possibilities living on the earth other than just providing food for the moon? One way, by dying, or another, by being part cadol duty whilst we are alive. What are the possibilities for human beings on the earth? And Gurdjieff's answer is contained in a teaching, higher being bodies. So the teaching is about higher being bodies. We have two higher being bodies I stress, although Beelzebub does explain to his grandson that we would regard these as souls, we would call these souls. They're actually higher being bodies. The body Kesdjian and the body of the soul. These are higher possibilities in human beings. And it's here that the three teachings sort of connect together so well that we can perhaps doubt the veracity of Gurdjieff's teaching, because they do fit together so well. Is the world so perfect? Because what Gurdjieff says is at this higher level, higher energetic level, the normal level that we should have, where we can actualize being part cadol duty, conscious labours and intentional suffering. When we do so, not only do we release the substance askokin as food for the moon, but we also release two other substances. One substance is called helkdonis, another substance is called abdustdonis, and these two substances at this higher level serve for the coating and perfecting, Gurdjieff's words, or Beelzebub's words, for the coating and perfecting of our higher being bodies. That is, we can start to develop and to perfect these higher being bodies, these higher aspects of ourselves. Each of us as individuals, by our work in terms of being practical duty. So that if we perform at this higher level, if we perform our function as producing askokin for the moon by means of being practical duty, conscious labours and intentional suffering, and are thus in a sense allowed by great nature to live our lives as we should and live for a long time as we should, because we are producing the substance askokin whilst we are alive. Equally, we are producing the substances abrastonis and helktonis, substances that will allow us, each as individuals, to perfect, to coat and perfect our higher being bodies, so that we are developing ourselves as individuals in this process. So the three teachings fit together. Now, they fit together, and this is why I've called it the integration of the teaching, because what is Gurdjieff's teaching? And it comes from a consideration of these three teachings presented in the Tales of Beelzebub to his grandson, Gurdjieff's own writings. And this is a conference on the writings of G.I. Gurdjieff. And the teachings fit together because Gurdjieff is saying, and I repeat it once more, there is a break in the chain of energetic production in us. We don't receive the foods at the higher levels that we should do. We don't have the energies we should have. We fall to a very low energetic level, a depleted energetic state, in which we fall into internal structures from which we cannot escape. That is to say, we can't exist, we don't have the energies to do so, we can't exist independently of these structures. We are totally identified with these structures. This is an abnormal situation, and as a result we are forced to create an abnormal psychology. Gurdjieff defines this abnormal psychology in his own writings about 150 times in his book The Tales of Beelzebub to his grandson as the abnormal external conditions of ordinary being existence established by us ourselves. The abnormal, we are abnormal, external conditions of ordinary, we are ordinary men and women, being existence established by us ourselves. We exist at too low a level. And we are forced to create in ourselves an abnormal psychology. It's an energetic situation. It's a structural situation. It's not a psychological situation beyond the fact that we have an abnormal psychology. We can't remedy this by psychological means. This is Ouspensky's error. This is the error of the Gurdjieff tradition coming from Ouspensky. This is your error, I would suggest, in your understanding of Gurdjieff, the understanding that it is a psychological teaching, that it is even a philosophical teaching. It's not. It's an energetic teaching, and as a result of this, the energetic study of man, of ourselves, it becomes a structural teaching, man the machine, not man the operator of the machine. So what is Gurdjieff's teaching? Why have I called this the integration of the teaching? It is because Gurdjieff is teaching, and I pointed out in 2010 at the All and Everything conference in Greece, in Loutraki in Greece, a paragraph at the start of the Tales of Beelzebub to his grandson, Gurdjieff's writings. The very start, he says he's going to transform us to give us the results we ought to have. We can look at this paragraph sometime. I've already introduced it over 15 years ago at the All and Everything conference. You should have read it by now. It's in the start of the Tales of Beelzebub to his grandson. It tells us what Gurdjieff is doing. We have fallen to a very low energetic level where we have an abnormal psychology. We can't remedy this fact by psychological means. So we're not teaching psychology, we're teaching energy. So what is Gurdjieff's teaching? Gurdjieff's teaching is there is a break in the chain of energetic production in us. So what have we got to do? We've got to remedy this break in the chain of energetic production in us. We can't do that by psychological means. We do that by techniques taught by a teacher. It's an energetic situation. And as we remedy this break in the chain of energetic production in us, we start to have some of the energies that we should have. And so Gurdjieff is teaching a transformation, a raising of the energetic level of the whole organism to a higher energetic level, at which point all the teachings that I've spoken about, all the possibilities that I've spoken about, begin. It is this transformation that Gurdjieff is teaching. And the three teachings that I've spoken about from the Tales of Beelzebub to his grandson are in a sense consequences of the teaching that Gurdjieff is giving. The teaching that Gurdjieff is giving is that there must first of all take place a transformation. The transformation is we must raise the energetic level of the whole organism up to a new level, at which point our own development can begin. It's about a transformation. Now Gurdjieff spoke about this to Ouspensky. Ouspensky records this in the book In Search of the Miraculous. This book very exact, said Gurdjieff, but it isn't exact. It's Ouspensky's opinions and misinterpretations and misunderstandings of Gurdjieff. Gurdjieff said this book very exact. He write what I say. And if we look at what Gurdjieff said, he spoke about this transformation. He called it the stairway. He was asked, find it in the book In Search of the Miraculous. From where, Mr. Gurdjieff, from where does the way begin? He replied, the way begins at a level much higher than the level of ordinary life. Between ordinary life and the way lies the stairway. We must ascend the stairway before any real individual development can begin. This is the transformation that Gurdjieff was speaking about. This is Gurdjieff's teaching. But how are we going to raise the energetic level of the whole organism? We're not going to do it by psychological means. Our abnormal psychology is a consequence of a cause. What's the cause? It's our depleted energetic state. So how are we going to raise the energetic level of the whole organism? Gurdjieff is quite clear there is a break in the chain of energetic production in us. And Gurdjieff very exactly gave to Ouspensky, Ouspensky recorded very exactly, the two food diagrams. One food diagram shows what appears to be, in comparison with the second food diagram, appears to be a depleted energetic state. This is our situation as ordinary men and women. We have fallen to such a low energetic level. This is our energetic level. But Gurdjieff gave to Ouspensky another food diagram. Ouspensky records it very exactly. The second food diagram. It appears to be an augmented energetic state, but it's not actually. This is how we should be. This is the higher energetic level that we should have. This is the state we should be in which our own possibilities for development can begin. And what is the difference between the two food diagrams? We see that it is in the receipt of the food of impressions. So this starts another topic, another step in Gurdjieff's teaching. It is the food of impressions coming from perception. a subject that does not occur at all in the Gurdjieff tradition, but is the central core of what Gurdjieff was teaching. In my opinion, he said, the trouble with you in the present instance is perhaps chiefly due to the fact that while still in childhood, there was implanted in you an excellently working automatism for perceiving all kinds of new impressions, the food of impressions, coming from perception. So we enter, by understanding what I'm saying, the integration of the teaching, by understanding what I'm saying, and understanding that Gurdjieff's teaching is not a teaching about psychology beyond the fact that we have an abnormal psychology. It is not a philosophical teaching. It is actually man the machine. Something is wrong with the machine. It doesn't have the energies it should have, and therefore the operator of the machine is forced to use the machine in an abnormal fashion. We have an abnormal psychology. And Gurdjieff's teaching is saying we can't put the machine right. The operator can't put the machine right in terms of his operation. It's not a psychological problem. It's a mechanical problem. It's an energetic problem. Where do the energies come from that we should have but don't have? They come from the food of impressions, and the food of impressions comes from perception. We have an excellently working automatism for perceiving all kinds of new impressions. Gurdjieff writes, this is Gurdjieff's teaching. Now I think that's extraordinarily complex, perhaps when you hear it for the first time, but we're actually at a conference on the writings of G.I. Gurdjieff. So you shouldn't be hearing this for the first time. I think you are. Because what you are following as Gurdjieff's teaching actually is not Gurdjieff's teaching. It's Ouspensky's teaching, which is a misinterpretation and misunderstanding of Gurdjieff's teaching, which took Gurdjieff's teaching as if it was a teaching about psychology. There's a sense in which it is, but Gurdjieff is saying we have an abnormal psychology because the machine doesn't work properly. And Gurdjieff's teaching is about the machine, the energies. And where do the energies come from? The food of impressions coming from perception. And there's not a single thing in the Gurdjieff tradition about perception. So this is the start of a new teaching about perception. So the integration of the teaching. What is Gurdjieff's teaching? It's about the machine. The machine doesn't work properly. It doesn't have the energies it should have. So the operator of the machine has to adapt to that fact, to use the machine. So we have an abnormal psychology. We can't remedy that fact by psychological means. We need to put the machine right. We need to provide the energies so that the machine will work properly. Where do the energies come from? The food of impressions coming from perception. So let's start to talk now about perception.